You guys, the kid is 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 the kid. We're back in here for another lovely Stay Black conversation. We do it every Tuesday. We, just talk about things and various topics concerning, Black people all over the world, in America, UK, all over the world, the diaspora, and so forth. So I thought, we would talk about voting. I want to talk about perhaps a little civil war, or is there a civil war happening between Black women and Black women? And if I have enough time, we'll talk about the media. So again, this might be a slight and shortened version. So this will obviously be within an hour or so. But I think that's enough time for us to get through with everything. And I think we have some conservatives in here. So I want to definitely say get the conservative viewpoints on this. So let me just kick things off. So huge, massive election happening this November that of course concerns Trump and Biden. I think Trump is going to destroy Biden, and Lord only knows what America will look like if Trump wins again and has another 4 years. Apparently someone tried to kill him, apparently, but we don't know, but that's what Trump claims. But what I've always found fascinating is this kind of relationship between Democrats and African Americans, where Black people feel, oh, let's roll with the Democrats. Even more problematic is a lot of it that Black people have with Bill Clinton. Even my mom was always fascinated, and she loved Bill Clinton. So I've always found that, okay, but why is this? Why is this so? So now it's important to have like an alternative viewpoint. But I made a video about why do Black people always vote Democrats? Why are they monolithic in that sense when they know that their votes are just being used and these Democrats don't even have to try hard to get their votes? Then I had a comment on my video where a dude said, what have the Republicans ever done for Black households? Or what have the Republicans really ever done for Black people, really, or helped Black people? What kinds of initiatives have they put across? I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I want to come first to Sam with this. What do you think? Why do you think today, in 2020, we're much more informed? There's a lot more information around and so forth. Why today is there still this overwhelming support that Black people have of Democrats? And how is in 2020 specifically, how is the Black Republican viewed today? Are they viewed as a sellout, an Uncle Tom or so forth? Or are people just sort of understanding that, hey man, if you're a Republican, you have a different viewpoint? Or are there still this kind of viewpoint that, oh, Republicans are racist, bad people? If you're Black and you're a Republican, therefore you're a sellout. What do you think of that, Sam?
Yeah, so I think if you put it over the trends of the past decade, I think that you still see that there is an overwhelming support for Black liberals and for liberalism in the Black community. I mean, mainly because of the big thing is proximity. A lot of Black politicians are Democrats or liberals. A lot of them follow a lot of those values in terms of like things such as pro-life, anti-gun, a lot of the basic fundamentals, things in terms of economics. And also when you look at it too, I think in general in society, when you look at things, people who are poor tend to lean towards leftist policies. So, I mean, apart from that, yeah. But one thing I do notice is that I would say since Trump came into power, you do see that Black conservatives are a little bit more notable and visible. Black conservatives have been around for a while.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think they're more notable because of Trump coming in as opposed to before, when, let's say, for instance, Bush was president?
I think the big reason is because what we've talked about many times before, like the far right and the far left have really exposed themselves. And also the other thing too is that over the long period of time that, I mean, Black people in America have been conservative prior to a lot of the shift that happened after like the New Deal and whatnot. But the thing about that is that there's just been a trend of people saying, oh, we're not, things aren't really working out for us. So that's really what's going on.
Okay. Tony G, Thoughts on that? Democrats and Black people, and how is the Black Republican viewed today in 2020?
I think right now, as far as how Republicans are viewed, or Black Republicans rather, is more so as, like the previous person said, as sellouts in a sense. But I think that's because of how exacerbated some people make Republicans out to be. I don't think that people are as informed about what policies are actually taking place versus the regular elementary type verbiage about, like, oh, Democrats do more for us and all that stuff. I think that ultimately over time there have been lots of switches. For instance, I think that most of us, as far as Blacks in America, turned over to Democrat because of LBJ and what he implemented after JFK. And I think that after that, we sort of held still because of the Fair Housing Act and so many things that that we attribute today for our successes, or the little successes that we have today. But I think that if people were to actually delve a little bit more into what Democrats are actually doing versus the actual rhetoric that's going around today, like actually see the actions versus what's actually being said, I think that we would see a massive change. And I think that most people would see that neither party is really giving us everything in totality of what we actually require and what we actually deserve for the time period that we've actually been in this country and what we've built up in this country to begin with. And I think, again, that it should not necessarily be an argument of versus Democrat versus Republican, but more so every election, it should be a debate on, okay, moving forward, who will do what for us? But as long as we stay in this whole, like, I'm just going to be a Democrat till the day I die, I think that that's foolish and, again, very elementary.
Okay. Tevin.
Yeah, so I agree with most of everything Tony said, but one thing I have a problem with is how we correlate our race with a specific party, right? So just because the Democratic Party is predominantly African American, I don't know why we, like, now currently say, hey, just because most African Americans are Democrat, then we're going to be Democrat. It's like we're not thinking, right? We don't think about our political views, or we don't think about the things that we are actually interested in. And it's just fascinating how I'm born Black, so I'm a Democrat. Or if I'm born white, so I need to be a Republican, or, I have some liberal ideology that my parents kind of like coast me into believing. I do think that if people really looked at the definition of the two, I do think most people in the African American community fall under a more like Republican view, or have Republican values versus a Democratic values. So, yeah, I agree with most of what Tony said. I don't know why we associate our race with a political party. So, yeah.
Okay. Corey.
Hey guys, can you hear me? I'm using a different mic now.
All clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Yeah. Nice to hear from you guys. We got two new guys on the chat this time. It's cool to hear you guys. So I grew up in Philly, so very conservative, or very democratic African American city, 50% Black. You have Black police officers and things like that. And I never felt pressure growing up to be Democrat. It was just something that, like, if I grew up around people that just weren't informed, and the more I began to inform myself on things, and my opinion diverged from my bubble that I grew up in, like my family and my friends and everything like that. The more we disagreed on things and we had arguments, and because well, the Republicans are saying some good things on fiscal issues, like why is the U.S. military everywhere? Why don't we why isn't capitalism great? Why capitalism has actually lifted more people out of poverty than any system. So why shouldn't we be celebrating these very American pillars that have helped Black people, things like that. And but I mean, it's never really veered towards me being called like an Uncle Tom or anything like that, because I've always been willing to call people out on both sides. And what I think a lot of liberal mind or Democratic African Americans, the beef they have with Black conservatives is that we fail to see the Black conservatives calling out other conservatives, specifically white conservatives. And that's where I think the whole moniker of Uncle Tom comes from, and oh, you're just a bedouin, or you're just in the pocket of these guys and everything like that. Because African Americans, I'm not going to speak for all African Americans, but the ones that I know, we value authenticity, and you don't seem very authentic if you're not able to kind of question everybody, And sometimes that's not a good thing. Sometimes you just need don't need to question everything. You need to all be on the same page and stuff like that. But other times it's good to question things. So, but I think I agree with a lot of the guys said. I think African Americans are very conservative by nature. The Democratic Party has taken a hold of African Americans because of not just Black people, but the Democratic Party is the party of Latinos, LGBTQ, women, things like that. For a long time, the DNC was very for a long time, the DNC was very diverse. The RNC was not. For a long time, the Democratic Party was very diverse. The GOP wasn't. The GOP wasn't. So it's just the optics. Like, we just see that and we're like, oh, okay, well, these must be the people. This must be the party for the minorities. But as time goes on, we are only 2 generations out of segregation, African Americans. So, a lot of people like to say, well, 1865 is when it all started, but it's not. I don't really look at it like that, because you had Jim Crow, you had segregation, you had all these other things that don't have labels that really didn't end until around 1965 or so. So give it time. Give it time. People are, saying that Black people are a monolith and we all think the same. And any Black person who thinks differently is Uncle Tom, or any Black person that votes Democrat is just a sheep and everything. Man, we need to give ourselves a little bit more time. We are 2 generations out of segregation. It will get better. And the last thing we need to do is be calling each other names and fighting with each other, because that's what we do with all the other minorities anyway, and the white people. So last thing we need to do is fight with each other. That's what I think.
Okay, so just based on what you guys have said, I want to set this little dilemma to you, and this is, I call these policies versus morals. Policies versus morals. And a name Jamel Hill comes up. So give a little bit of a backdrop. So of course, you had that whole Joe Biden thing when he was interviewed by Charlemagne from the Breakfast Club, and he said that if you don't vote for me, then if you vote for Trump, then you ain't Black, something like that. And then Jamel Hill said, no, yeah, you're right, because this is a different kind of election that we're having, and what you're seeing, and a feeling I'm getting watching TV shows, Twitter sphere, Facebook sphere, Instagram, and so forth, is many people aren't voting for Biden because they want Biden. They're voting for Biden because they hate Trump. So what is more important? Because the argument that people will say is, this man is so racist. Okay, we can do the debates how he's racist and so forth. But this man is so racist, he's so deplorable, he's so terrible that we have to get him out of office, because he has so completely soiled the very good name of American presidency. But again, what the heck is America? You flipping stole the country and killed all of the Native Americans there. But then people say, no. It should always be about policies. Forget about who the man is and so forth and everything. Now, does this man's policies help my family financially? Do they help me with regards to the security of my job? Do they help me with the fact to a tax break in order for me to have enough disposable income and luxury income for us to go on holidays and for me to live the best possible life for my family and so forth? That should always be what should matter to me. Or should you give up these policies for doing the moral thing in, even if you don't even know who Biden is, he's the lesser of 2 evils because Trump is so bad? What is the right way to go across with this, Sam?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if I wanted to go fully moral, I'm just going to be straight up. I wouldn't vote for either of them. But the problem is we do not have that option. Like I will straight tell anybody to their face, if I really wanted to go fully moral on this, I would not vote for either of them, because neither of them because you know what, both candidates show me that right now we're at a point where we don't have a single person who has the mental fortitude, who has the EQ, the combination of EQ and IQ to lead this country. It's a very tough job. They don't have the experience. They don't have the moral fiber. They don't have the understanding of one thing that I was even talking with Corey about before, this accountability. Because I feel like that's left our country. I feel like a lot of people.
So what do you do then? Because you have a dilemma, because really it's only these two guys. So is it better to just not vote, or do you go with, all right, who's the lesser of both evils?
Now, there's a couple things. So for the executive, you got to remember the election is not just limited to the executive, i.e. the president. It's you're voting for your Congress members, you're voting for your senators, you're voting for all those people, everyone down to the district, city, and those people, because those will be the ones that actually will do things that directly affect you. And finding out those people are going to be really what it is. Now, what I will say about the executive, though, is that it is a lesser of two evils, and I think about it from when you have to deal with the lesser of two evils when it comes to the executive, you want to go with somebody, you want to go with the quickest way to the ejection seat for either one. And I mean, when you look at it, who's going to be the first to go? When can we reset and go to the next one? Whether that's through impeachment, whether that's through them not being as effective as a leader or as an executive, to where whatever they've done in the past 4 years is irrelevant. And that's why I would go with Biden. That's the only reason I would go with Biden, because I don't think he's going to last the election. I think with that we can pretty much have the proper reset on both
Wait, so what do you mean by he won't last the election?
Dude's 77 years old. He has dementia. He's crazy. He's got all types of issues. He won't last the election. I would just vote him in so that he's just as a fucking stopgap.
Wow.
That sounds pragmatic as fuck, but that's the honest truth.
Okay, all right. Tony G, what do you say on this, man?
So I think there's a lot to unpack as far as this whole lesser of two evils argument. I think it's very interesting that Kamala Harris could point out on the debate stage live in front of the world that Joe Biden has been around since segregation and was clearly on the wrong side of history. And yet we are still saying that he's the lesser of two evils when Trump wasn't even in a political atmosphere to do something that was so detrimental. And I think that in terms of, again, picking out policy versus morals, it should always be policy. And I think that's what the problem is. I think that a lot of times media is pushing out different narratives to describe Trump as this evil person, but no one can really pinpoint out specific policies that he created himself versus what he's actually extending, right? So a lot of people will point to the whole DACA situation and locking people up, but like Obama was known as this guy who was, what's the term? I can't think of the term now, but they had a nickname for him in terms of him locking up immigrants, illegal immigrants that were coming over. So a lot of these same things that we see Trump doing versus, or rather extending out, are policies that Obama had already put in place, but because he was Black or because he had a Black face, a lot of people sort of ignored that kind of thing. And I think that in terms of not having other options as far as presidency, I think that there was once upon a time, like back in the early 20s, early 30s, where there was a huge push for a third party or an independent party. And I think that we still have the capability to do that. A lot of times,
So why? Because speaking of, why isn't there a third option? Why is there a thing where you are forced to do two options and that's it? Because again, we live in a very varied and different kind of world. How is it that a third option isn't even of consequence?
So that's part of the problem, right? It's not that there isn't a third option. I think like even originally when Trump first, ran, he was going against Hillary, and there was this whole thing of like, oh, women empowerment, Hillary's the woman on the ticket, yada yada, as if there wasn't a Jill Stein who was on the Green Party ticket, or as if like right now there's not a Black woman named Angela who's on the Green ticket as a VP. Again, if we do research versus just listening to the media repeat different narratives that are just quite frankly just antics just to make us feel a certain type of way versus actually stating facts. I don't know what we're going to do unless we actually do the work, do the research. The internet is open for everybody, and libraries are free. So right now, we really don't have an excuse for people not to know that there's a third party. I mean, there's the Green Party, there's the Libertarian Party. Who knows how many other parties there are? It's not just the Republican or the Democratic Party. Part of the problem too that I have with the argument of the lesser of two evils, even if we do en masse go vote for Biden, who's to say that, like last time, the Electoral College won't come in and vote the opposite of what people said? Because Hillary did win the popular vote.
Yeah.
So this whole argument that people didn't come in and vote and use their morals and use their mental capacity to do the right thing, like it's just nonsense. There's still different elements a part of this whole voting process that, again, if we weren't paying attention in history class, or where they taught different elements of government and whatnot, then society has just basically failed us. And again, we're just going to keep listening to the media blame us for something that rich people or people of power are actually putting in place. Because I personally think, not to get into conspiracy theories or anything, I personally think that Trump for a very long time has been funding Democratic candidates. And then he decided to go Republican for whatever reason, just so that he could become president. I think, heck, if I was him, I would do the same thing. If after a while, like, I'm just funding everybody to get up here and, make history, why not go in there and do it for myself? So I think, again, we have to think twice about this whole lesser of two evils, this whole idea of, Republicans are just horrible or that Trump is just horrible, because I guarantee you that if we were to compare notes as far as what Trump is doing versus what Obama did, you would see a lot of similarities. And I think that's the problem with both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Regardless of the definitions of either party, they're both ultimately doing the same thing. They both are influencing capitalism, which unfortunately has been to the detriment of most of Black America.
I want to jump in and real quick, and I want you to, and HH, can you pull up that last comment from Al Mahadist? No, the one at the very bottom. Not that one. The one at the very bottom. That one. That's the moral reason why I don't support Trump. Because over the past 4 years, this is what he's been doing. I mean, through his whole campaign, that's what he's been doing. He's basically been getting, as far as policies, don't get me wrong. Some of his policies have been good for the Black community. I mean, supporting HBCUs. I mean, some of them, the opportunity zone stuff, whatever. But the problem is that what is that all going to matter when the rest of the population fucking hates you? Or the rest of the population has been emboldened to fucking hate you.
Sam, you know how I feel about this, man. I think that he's pandering to a very, very small bunch of people.
He's a businessman, man. He's just trying to win. So wait, let me just get some of the guys. So Tevin, lesser of two evils, and this whole thing of the moral victory of getting out Trump. Where do you stand on that?
Can you come back to me? I'm heading to the house right now. Sorry.
Okay, cool. Corey.
Hey, can I comment on that really quick?
Yeah. Go for it.
So what I'll say to the whole emboldening white supremacy in general, I think that that's what white America does in general. Again, if Biden has a history of voting on the wrong side, or if he has a history of being known to be the guy who is, who can meet people in the aisle and bring people together, right? Like, I think there's a guy named Strom Thurmond or something like that, who was a very big Republican who was strongly against MLK and all of that stuff. Well, Joe Biden actually spoke at his funeral, and Joe Biden was a big proponent for this guy, this racist guy, because this guy sort of groomed Biden into his position. And I think that, unfortunately, I think that Biden became the VP after 2 failed attempts at becoming president to make white people feel comfortable in general. And I think that in terms of bold white supremacists, again, I think it's all about definitions. I don't think that Trump is the first racist president ever. I think most white presidents are interested in preserving white people in general. I will say that racists probably vote in every election. So it's interesting to me that we would point out Trump and act like he's just this big phenomenon. I think that in general, people, Democrats and Republicans, use him to cover up their own, lack of ability in the office. And I think that a lot of times there's all this rhetoric around, what he's saying. Am I saying that he doesn't say stupid stuff? No, I think that, he could definitely take, some public speaking classes for sure. But ultimately, do I think that he just hates Black people? No.
Oh, no.
Do I think that his,
you see, what I always say is
we've addressed that too.
Yeah, no, it's like for me, I say there are certain levels of racism. Like Trump is racist, but not the kind of racist that he has been shown to be by the media. He's the kind of racist that is rich white guy who doesn't have really much experience with Black people and so forth. But put him in a room with Black people, cool. He just does not think much of Black people.
And you just described Joe
a certain
Biden.
kind of racism where like he doesn't really have that much respect for Black people. He doesn't hate them. He just does not really respect them or see them truly as equal. So he uses trickery and so forth. Hey, shake your hand. Hey, come on, all that kind of thing. So that's a different flavor of racism as opposed to a guy who hates Black people and really wants to just insult them and doesn't want anything to do with them. So
I'm going to give Tony the benefit of the doubt there too, because because I do agree with you when you jumped in and said that Biden's the same way. That's exactly how I feel, because just this morning, I actually pulled up a meme. I saw a meme that one of my friends put up about Biden and stuff. And I said Trump's racist. And he was like, Biden's more racist. I mean, bro, they're both racist. Fuck. We know that. It's not, it's both are put well on record. It's just that the thing about it is that when I see it is that who can do more damage, while one can benefit me, that one can probably also damage me just as bad. That's really what it comes down.
Okay, Corey.
Yeah. So first of all, just lead with MLK Day was blocked by the GOP back in the 80s. That's is it wasn't just Strom Thurmond. It was quite a few Republican politicians that blocked MLK Day. Some of them are even alive today. So MLK Day wasn't this thing that was universally accepted by all. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of Black people don't really ride with the Republican Party, because during the 80s that was a kind of a big thing, especially for my parents and my grandparents. I do remember that. But Joe Biden is a kind of a typical out of touch old white man. When I heard that comment with Charlemagne, he just came off as a typical out of touch old white man who grew up in a country where people who talk like that was kind of normal. He probably doesn't see young Black men as anything positive. But then again, I think that's typical of a lot of white men his age that grew up in a country that was basically very different than a country it is now. I mean, you can't really, I don't want to say you can't blame him, but he's a product of his environment. So we're not going to find any 75, 70, 80-year-old white man in a country that's not going to be slightly racist like that. I agree with, I think what Tony was saying, or one of you guys was saying, we need to get away from this alpha chimp mentality. Or I think it was you, HH, this winner takes all, one man to rule them all type of deal. This is the reason I think why we have a two-party system in the first place. This winner takes all ideology. You ask when will America ever get to a point where the character of the president doesn't matter and it's just the politics, it's just his ideology and his points. Not in this country, not anytime soon. I think ideology is important, character is important. The president being a family man is a man of morality. That's important. That's just the way things are in the U.S.
But how do we? I know it's hard, but how don't we get people to sit down, look at policies, look at things that can benefit them or solve,
Um,
rather than say, "Oh, he looks cool. Oh, he's handsome. He's so well
well,
spoken." Because again,
I
that's such a stupid way to vote for someone.
well the
So
well the
how is it that
pessimistic
people are
the
thinking like where you're not actually reading what guys are saying, that you are actually fooled by the trickery, the dance,
right,
and
the
all
smoke
that?
and mirrors and stuff like that. Well, that's politics. But the pessimist in me just says, well, most Americans don't read, so you're gonna have to put that shit on TV or YouTube video to get people to understand and listen to the issues. But the optimist in me just says, maybe the U.S. could benefit from a coalition type of system, not caucuses, a coalition type of system. I think I said this last time. This would kind of help give people more options, at least on the federal level. People who are Black Republicans, Black conservatives, white Republicans, white conservatives. We need coalitions that at the end of the day they have what we want in mind, what we want, and they fight for the things that we want. And then at the end of the day, those people bring that up, and then the president, whoever's in charge, has to work with these coalitions to get stuff done. We will really benefit from a coalition type of system in this country. Trump, I think Trump is racist. I know one of you guys said, it's never really been proven that Trump is a racist. Or Trump, especially after the Central Park 5 incident and the lawsuit he lost when black tenants sued him for unfair treatment. After that, he was generally seen as a racist loudmouth, at least on the East Coast, in New York and Philly. People that know Trump, he was generally seen as a racist loudmouth. Biden, the same. Biden's an old school Democrat. That says it all. I mean, it really is the lesser of the two evils. And lastly, I would just say, I know you guys mentioned. Yep.
Okay. So wait. So you do agree of lesser of two evils is a good ploy
Yeah.
to? Okay.
I mean, not only I don't say it's good, is what we got. Good would be a coalition type system of more than just two choices for president. And then we do kind of have that when we have debates, when we have not the incumbent, but the challenger. They have a debate system like we just had last year, where everybody kind of gets up and pitches their thing and everything like that. But we need to focus more on the local level. We need to go back to focusing more on the local and state level, where things really get done. Because on a federal level, this country was not really built to have all these moving pieces and all these decisions made on a federal level. This stuff should be made on the state and local level, which that's the idea of the country, right? So we need to kind of take things back to that. I mean, like, the president really should not be that important, except in turn and national issues, like if we're being invaded, or the military has something to do with it, or their environment, or space travel, or something like that. The president really should not be talking about gay wedding cakes. The president should not be talking about stuff that's going on in the country, unless it's like a natural disaster or something like that. We need to get back to the local and state level stuff.
Yeah. Tevin.
Yes.
So do you agree with the notion of lesser of two evils? That you should vote for morals over policies?
I personally like the fact that Donald Trump has exposed politics in general, right? I like the fact that I can talk to my sister that is 17 years old, and she now is involved, and she's got her ideal now, what she thinks she believes in or whatnot. But I don't think Republican politics talks to the majority of African American community, right? Because the United States continue to struggle with a persistent wealth gap, a racial gap, wealth gap, whatever you want to call it. There's a large gap between Black and whites in terms of income, political reparations, and treatment in criminal justice system. And just wealth in general. And the illusion of post-racist societies, particularly in the young generation, is hindering the effort, because it's reducing these gaps. I don't believe, I do believe the Democrats say they're trying to alleviate the racial gap, the wealth gap, and increasing the ladder of opportunity for people of color. I do believe that. However, for Republicans, I don't think they can. they're like oblivious. Like Donald Trump, he would say, "Oh, there's in the beginning of the virus, he was like, oh, this is not a virus, we got it under control, right? When the Black Lives Movement matters took off, he's like, oh no, there's that gap doesn't exist. We're not racist, whatnot. I don't think Republicans, their policies actually benefit the African American community until they start to talk about the wealth gap. I think collectively, African Americans, ADOS people, Americans descent of slaves, are extremely poor in America. And this is why the Black community is not so involved in politics. And we hear Democrats, they throw social programs in our communities, and we just gravitate towards them easily. And once the Republican Party start to acknowledge the wealth gap, acknowledge the racial gap, and I do think more ADOS people will start to gravitate towards the Republican ideology. But I personally don't believe Trump speaks to the African American community collectively as a whole. And I think like the African American community have cultural problems too. So there's a lot more involved. I don't think Trump is better than what's his name, Joe Biden. I don't think Biden is better than Trump. I personally don't think either of them are better for the Black community.
So what do you do then? So
Hey,
if you're Black, then what do you do?
Tevin, can I just ask you a quick question real quick? What do you think
Yes.
the answer is do you think Brexit is the answer? Because when I hear people,
sorry, you broke up.
do you think? I said, do you think Brexit is the answer? Like when I hear people like Candace Owens say, well, the answer to all your problems as Black Americans is just go over to the Republican Party. That sounds a lot to me like what the Democrats used to say. Well, just come over to the Democratic Party. We'll solve all your problems. When I hear people say just come over to the GOP and that'll solve all Black people's problems, that sounds familiar.
Like the really interesting thing right now to me, like the Black Lives Matter movement, they don't have a single leadership mechanism, right? Like Martin Luther King was the face of the civil rights movement. Malcolm X, like these guys were like the face, right? And now you see like the Black Lives Movement organization, there's not one guy advocating on the behalf of African Americans. And that shows you how our culture, how the culture is in our communities. We don't work together to generate concerns, generate issues, and like get in the room with policymakers and demand reform. I just don't think we work together, and we don't have a voice as a community in general.
I actually want to talk about that because
wait. Actually, let's just bring in Ray because he's not really spoken anything on this. So Ray, so the question is, so we've just decided that I brought in the issue of policies versus morals. So should you always, despite whatever is happening, always look at the policies, what president does best for me, or as Jamel Hill was saying, no, this is something different. We have to get this guy out. Trump is so bad. He's so problematic that forget whatever whatever his policies may be that may benefit you. You must do the moral and ethical thing and vote for Biden, who is the lesser of two evils because Trump is so bad. Where do you stand on that with regards to voting?
When I talk to someone and I tell them that, hey, I personally
no, this is to Ray.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So I say that small picture, the individual gets to decide for themselves. So if you're a Black person who says, you know what, I don't owe Blacks anything. When I look in the mirror, I don't see blood.
Yo, Ray.
Nothing to do with me. I don't think you said anything offensive. You don't owe. If you decide that you are not connected to a community, that's your decision. So if you say you're not connected, you're not connected. I'm not going to fist fight you to say, yes, you are connected. That's your life path. That's your walk. Now, if you want to zoom out and get aggregate, no, absolutely not. They're not the same. When Biden and Trump, when people say that, what they're really wanting you to do is become stupid. And by stupid, I mean they want you to pretend that we don't have something called magnitudes. Magnitudes is the equivalent of, let's say it's passing score where you go to school. A passing score is a 70 or higher. One kid got a 69, one kid got a 17 out of 100. The people who say that Trump and Biden are equal, they are the people telling you that there is no difference between a 69 and a 17. And they're using the fact that they're both Fs to sell the lie. Yes, as far as a letter grade, they're both Fs. Or actually, when I grew up, they were E's, but that's a whole nother story. But if you start talking about how do we fix things, which student are you going to work with? It is not going to be the same amount of work working with the student that got a 69 versus the student that got a 17. So whenever I hear somebody try to have a conversation as if magnitude doesn't exist, even when people say no president ever has done anything for black people. Now, if this person clarifies himself and they say that I give every president, but if you literally try to say there's no difference between a 17 president and a 69 president, that's a whole nother issue. And really, it's someone that you really can't have a proper discussion with, because no matter how much facts you bring up behind them, it's not going to matter for them. So getting deeper into, the Republicans and Black Party and Democrats, I say you can't have it both ways. You can't say that, one, let's be a community and let's get together, but you're the only smart Black person and the rest of us are just dumb as hell. And we're so dumb, that's why we vote for Democrats. You have to choose. Either we're all stupid and you're the smart one, or maybe there is some actual reasoning other than being tricked why Blacks, even in the previous times, voted for Democrats. I find it amazing that Black people themselves sell this narrative that our ancestors were just these dumb bastards who were so stupid, who just joined up with the Democrats simply because the Democrats gave them a promise, and that's all it took. They got nothing from it, and they just kept voting because they're so stupid. You come from them, but you're the smart one. You're the woke one. I honestly recommend that people who truly believe that maybe do a little bit of history reading. And I'm not even going to say your own, because again, if you don't consider yourself connected to them, you don't consider yourself connected. But I recommend doing reading. Tying into the BLM comment, here's what I notice. No matter who it is, the people who speak strongest about a group are usually the ones who spend the least. Not going to be able to stay on here much longer because I am a leader locally of BLM for where I'm at. And I am doing these engagements to where that's what I'm about to do the next 4 or 5 hours, engaging other groups within the community outside of the Black community about what BLM stands for and what it means. So whenever someone says the problem is there's not this one guy, I will never support some one guy representing all the Black people. Coming back to respect and individualism, when we talk about the white voter, whites aren't all together. Italians aren't all together.
People are.
It's spoken of like this. Single mothers between the ages, single working mothers between the ages of 34 and 35 who live in urban areas and like wine. That's how you talk about the white voter. You break it down into these subsections. For some crazy reason, when we talk about the Black voter, they don't get that respect. We don't talk about the African-American educated voter who's ex-military. We don't say the current military without a college degree, the same way we do the whites. And until we start doing that, the conversation's always going to be BS because you're refusing from the jump to give the same level of respect to the reality. You have Black people who are out in the streets robbing, shooting, and killing folks. You also have Blacks who are out there working in corporate life. If you were unable to speak about these two groups separate, because they are separate, they rarely talk to each other, then your conversation's always going to be broken. So when we talk about, the Black vote and the Black voter, the first thing you really should consider, say what you want to say, free country. You might want to consider, though, which Black voter, because I'm hearing a lot of things about Blacks that honestly, I can find a group of people it's true, but you're not talking about me. You're not talking about my people. You're not talking about my circle. So I really group of dumbasses who voted for Democrats who don't know any better. And I say my last thing about the Republican Party. If the Republican Party lived by Republican values, I would be a Republican. The problem is they recommend Republican values for others. They don't live them themselves. Just like how Black people have been called lazy ever since they stopped working for free. The day slavery was done, Black people became lazy. It's also funny to me how America, even conservative America, did not have an issue with the federal government giving away free stuff until they started also giving it to minorities. From the Homestead Act to the Oklahoma land rush to the GI Bill to the VA loan, which, by the way, even though Black soldiers fought when they returned home, that whole states' rights BS, they purposely used states' rights to make sure that while Blacks were taxed, they didn't have to share any of that money with Blacks. It was collected up to the federal level. It was distributed to the states, and the states made sure Blacks did not get a share. You will find no historical evidence of conservatives talking about how the FHA loan and the VA loan destroyed America. That was free money, nearly free money. Even all the way through the 80s, where the federal government was funding suburbs, giving away homes to whites, you don't see Republicans talking about how this will destroy America. Free stuff only became a problem once you started giving it to Black and brown people. So I guess I don't see the issue with free stuff. I see the issue with free stuff being given to Black and brown.
So I want to just pick up on the part. So again, we probably have about 10 minutes left before we have to go. So this is a short version because I've got some things to do. So last 10 minutes, I want to go back to the Biden points that Ray raised. I want to take this back to Tony G, who spoke very strongly against the whole two-party system and so forth. Because Ray said that you can work with a Biden, and and I think that's an interesting analogy, which is there are varying gradients of an F. And bro, maths, chemistry, I got many Fs in my day, man. Trust me. Shout out to my chemistry teachers, man. I was horrible. So yeah, I've seen many Fs in my life. So, but that is an interesting thing, though. So let me come to Tony G, who felt very strongly about Biden and Trump are the same. So Tony G, do you agree with Ray's point that, okay, he may not be great, but you can work a lot more with a Biden as opposed to a Trump, or you still feel that there's still that massive wise politician disconnect and the populace?
So first, I want to be very clear on my position.
I'm saying they're not the same. That's all I'm saying. Maybe Biden freeze frame thing and there's no forward movement. I don't know that. I do know they're not the same.
So here's what I'll say. What I do know is that Trump and Biden both graduated at the lowest levels of their college classes. I also know that clearly they've supported both very strong racist people in general. My position again is that back in the day, during the civil rights era, and even previous to that or pre-civil rights era, white people, both in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, they both courted the Black vote. Now the Black vote is just completely free. We just, without any limitations, without any questioning, even again, I say, if Kamala Harris, one of the main Black people running for president at the time, is on the stage telling you that this man during times of segregation was on the wrong side of history, I don't understand how we don't question his logic and his morals, let alone his policies, when we have a track record of his policies over 40 years because he is a career politician. That is my problem with him in general. And again, I don't think that the sentiment that we should just go for Biden because the only other option is Trump, that is not the only other option. Again, we talk about the independent party. We also talk about the electoral college who can trump over everything that the popular vote will in fact decide for themselves.
But real quick, Tony, on that point though, I do get it that yes, in an ideal sense, there are other parties and so forth, but there is idealism and realism. In reality, it really is either or. That is the reality, because it's going to take many, many years before that third party really establishes itself to a point where come election, okay, you now definitely have three guys that can vote. Because it's similar to what happened in the UK, where the Liberal Democrats and the conservatives actually had a coalition, because the Liberal Democrats were able to get to a point where, oh wow, actually, because people were so pissed off with Labour, they're like, oh, Liberal, come on, let's see what we can do. And conservatives had to have a coalition with the Liberal Democrats, but there hasn't been a third person to really rise up. So is it still not wise to have this again? Because the choices, as what many people are saying, either I do for this, that, or I just don't vote.
Again, I would say that ultimately, the last election, a lot of people complained and talked about how the Green Party was taking away votes from the Democratic Party. So either they are a factor that we should be considering, or they're just a non-factor. And again, the media is just lying to us. So it's either or. We can't.
They're a non-factor. For every person who said that, there was 10 people who don't even know who they are. They were a non-factor.
And you know what? And to that point, I would say that there were millions more people who just didn't vote at all versus those who actually voted for the Green Party. So again,
and the people who didn't vote, they're the same people. They fall in the same bucket. They don't know who the Green Party is, so they're still a non-factor.
But the problem is again, to your point about like how people are saying like, oh, if you just vote Democrat, then you're stupid. I don't think that that's the sentiment, and that's definitely not the place that I come from. Again, I think that people who vote Democrat are coming from a historical standpoint, again, with LBJ and JFK and all of those promises, and even FDR and what they did on a socialist type level of supporting everybody that included the poor. So there's definitely reason to go Democrat. I get that. But now moving forward.
But also, I want to come to Sam and Corey on this. But to this point, Tony, and then I'm going to come to Sam and Corey. Do you agree that you can work more with a Biden as opposed to a Trump? That if Biden is in power, you can work with that and make you can make more progress with Biden as opposed to you can do with Trump if you're Black and especially poor?
I think in order for me to believe that, I would have to believe that with 4 more years of Obama that we would progress. If I believed that, then sure, because Biden to me is nothing but now a reflection of Obama's continuation, his legacy. Other than that, no, I don't. I don't believe that we'll get any further, because unless unbeknownst to me, unless we got further with Obama, like unless maybe you guys got more money under Obama, maybe you guys got more opportunities, maybe your family now has wealth all of a sudden, I don't see how Biden is any help. And I also don't see how Biden is arguing or creating policies right now or stating any policies, because we're not even pressing him to do anything for Black people.
Okay. Actually, wait. Let me bring in Sam. Sam.
Okay, now this is where I'm going to go back into my concept of pragmatism. So what I said with Biden, it's not just about the length of time. It's not about what he will do. It's about about the things that he will stop Trump from doing, things that are going on that will happen. And in terms of the Black community, I think one of the biggest ones we need to talk about is education, because my big worry is he's going to undo decades of education that pretty much is teaching not just the fundamentals, but concepts of tolerance, concepts of respecting one another, understanding. Curriculums that are basically filled history books of Black history, that is part of America, which is part of American history, in fact. And the thing about it is that he's supporting Supreme Court justices, Congress people that are basically trying to undo that, and that's the issue.
So to that, what I would.
Corey?
Oh yeah. So I agree with I think you can actually work with Biden more than Trump, because Trump is a little shameless. Trump is a little bit of an egotistical guy. He's a bit of a narcissist. He's a bit of a wild card. I think that's why a lot of people voted for him, to kind of shake things up. And he's independent and all, he's an independent thinker. But I think with Biden, being a career politician, he can buckle under a certain amount of political pressure. You can kind of get him to at least listen to you. I think Tony D is correct. Black people aren't being hard enough on Biden. They aren't really pressuring him and asking him the right questions. What are you going to do for us specifically? I think there are some black in.
Why aren't they?
I think there.
Is it because they
Why,
just hate Trump so much?
because no, because but I mean, I don't think blacks really pressured Obama either. I think that's just we are kind of so used to voting Democrat and things being Democrat, and it's almost like, we don't really, if we pressure Biden and Biden says something stupid or he says the wrong thing, then what are we going to do? We don't want to vote Republican. So what other choice do we have? We don't want to, we don't, it's kind of like the ugliness that we don't really want to look at probably, and I said that, and I said before, black conservatives don't call out white conservatives. And that's why people call them Uncle Toms. I would say the same thing about black liberals. We don't call out and pressure black Democrats or any Democrats enough either, And I mean, what does that make us? So, but I do think Biden's a more easier person to work with, simply because, I think if Biden wins, you'll see Barry a lot more in the White House. You see Obama a lot more in the White House. I think, he might become one of his trusted advisors. And I think Obama might be able to maybe talk to Trump, listen, or talk to Biden, convince Biden, maybe one of his advisors. Maybe it looks like Trump doesn't even listen to his advisors. If any of his advisors contradicts him publicly or goes against anything what he's saying, he fires him. So I think Biden would be a much easier person to work with. Trump doesn't seem as like a team player.
Okay, so just to round this off before we head out of here, I'll keep on asking this, and this will also be like a tidbit as we build up to what I think could be one of the most explosive elections in world history. Who do you think will win the US election? So let me jump off and then I'll go to each of you. I really don't know. Because where I'm standing right now is there is a compelling argument for both. No matter how crazy Trump has done and all the things they have said, he said all these crazy things and they still voted for him right now. Just that we've seen him for these 4 years, and some people who have voted for Trump are like, whoa, okay. But then Biden is such a basically Biden, he reminds me of, what's the name of that? Is it Huckabee or something? He's just such a bad candidate that is void of any personality. And I'm like, how can this dude win? But basically Biden only wins by how much people hate Trump. So if Biden wins, I'm like, man, people really hated Trump. Not because Biden was good, it just shows you how much people hated Trump. So where I stand right now is I think Biden wins, just because I just think that some people are like, you know what, this Trump, he's too much of a loose cannon. And I think that obviously Trump has, so Mikey, are those independents and those swing voters? Those swing voters would be like, you know what, Biden, this guy's a brick. I don't care about this guy, but this dude is such a loose cannon and could put us in such crazy trouble, which wasn't George Bush Jr. was just an airhead. He just wasn't very, very clever. He wasn't a loose cannon. Trump is far more dangerous than a Bush Jr. George Bush Jr. Was really Cheney pulling all the strings, but a Trump who, as you said, he doesn't have a Cheney. He doesn't listen to a Mike Pence. He does everything himself. Is very dangerous, if in the wrong situation. So I'm going to say Biden, by the virtue of the facts of people's fear of Trump and their hatred of Trump. Sam?
Yeah, so I think if, like I said before, if COVID and the whole George Floyd thing didn't happen, this would have been a slam dunk for Trump. But with those, I mean, it threw a couple things in there. There's a ton of things going on right now, and Trump, and this is really going to really test Trump and see what's going on. So I say Biden very, 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 very close, because I think what's going to happen is that I think because of the cities, because you got to also think about population when you think about votes. The population is in the cities. If you can't win the cities and you can't win the swing states, you're not going to win. You're not winning the election. The popular vote, I think, will heavily go in Trump's favor. And depending,
so you think that Biden gets the swing states?
I think Biden will get the swing states because there's a lot of people that hate Trump, and the electoral votes, I think, will be very, very, very close.
Okay.
Barely edging.
Tony, where do you stand, man?
I still think that it will ultimately be a toss up, although my hope is that Trump will win because I think that over time, if Biden was to win, people would just go back to sleep as they were with Obama, and they would continue to act as though inequality wasn't as big of a deal as if health problems in the Black community wasn't exacerbated more so than in the white community. And I think that people are more politically active right now. So I think that our best bet is for Trump to win so that people continue to be mad, so that they'll continue to read and do their research.
But what do you think will happen? I know what you hope, but what do you think will happen?
I said it's a toss-up. I think either way, because again, I still believe the Electoral College has more power than we actually realize.
Okay, Corey, round us off.
I just gotta say, Tony, I like your the way you think, man. It's really good. But that last comment, man, I just don't understand. That's a strange reason to agree to give a person access to the nuclear codes and access to the ability to airstrike people just for his election to wake people up and for his election to make people get serious about stuff. I mean, that's a dangerous precedent, man. Like, I think Trump is a dangerous person. But let's see how the debates go. You know, or the one debate, and I'll know for sure then. Right now, I think Biden. I used to think Trump, you know, but now I think Biden might pull it off. That Axiom or Axios, whatever, interview with Trump was a disaster. So after that interview, I think Biden. You know, if the election were to be today, I would say Biden will win. But let's see what happens with the debates.
Okay. So that is it for us here, guys. Obviously, this was a bit of a short version because I'm very, very busy for today and so forth. But hopefully next week, I want to hopefully get more in detail with regards to Black Republicans and so forth. And I definitely want to also touch on the other topics of, you know, Black women and Black men, also media as well. And I think the importance of Black people in media and how they're depicted. So again, thank you for all of you guys coming in here to join us today. And hopefully you guys can come in again on Tuesday, 7 p.m. BST for us to do this again. So hopefully you guys have a good one and a good day. And yeah, man. Also, by the way, Russia has a vaccine for COVID-19. So I don't know whether you want to take it. What I'm saying is that Putin's daughter took it. That's what I'm saying. So
is Russia, it a real one?
Bro, look, Putin's daughter took the vaccine. All I'm saying is that, Putin, I love you. You're my guy. I ain't taking no vaccine from Russia at the moment. So I'm going to wait. Guys, peace out, and I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Peace out. Peace. Become a Half Hope Talks member and gain access to exclusive videos and also the chance to watch films, anime, or different videos with your boy HH exclusively. Just click below on the join button to join in and become a Half Hope Talks member to gain access to these perks. Just click on the community icon over here to view the new members only posts just